Every man at the car meet has a story. His uncle had one, his neighbor had one, his dad had one, and somehow every single one of them owned the fastest muscle car in America. A Chevelle that never lost, a Hemi Cuda that embarrassed everything, a Camaro that ran like it had something to prove, a Buick that looked like your grandfather's car but moved like it had been hiding a criminal record. And every time the story gets told, the car gets a little faster, the tires hook a little harder, the quarter-mile time gets a little lower, and the other guy loses by a little more. But here is the truth. The fastest muscle car lie America still believes is not that these cars were slow. They were not slow. Some of them were absolute monsters. The lie is that speed was ever just about the car. Because in the golden age of American muscle, the truth was hiding under the hood, in the gearing, on the tires, in the driver's hands, and sometimes in the memory of a man who had been telling the same story for 40 years. This is not just a story about horsepower. This is a story about pride. Detroit, streetlights, drag strips, magazine tests, garage talk, and the American need to say one sentence louder than everybody else. My car was the fastest. Every car has a story. Every racer has a claim. Every legend has a lie. And this is the fastest lie in America. In the 1960s, America did not just want transportation. America wanted identity. A car was not just how you got to work. It was how you showed up. It was how a young man told the world he had arrived before he had money, a title, or a corner office. The right car could make you look dangerous. The right engine could make you feel important. And the right badge on the fender could turn a grocery store parking lot into a courtroom. Ford understood it. Pontiac understood it. Chevrolet understood it. Dodge and Plymouth absolutely understood it. By the mid-1960s, Detroit had discovered something powerful. If you put a big engine in the right body, gave it the right name, and sold it to the right young buyer, you were not just selling a car, you were selling a fantasy. The Pontiac GTO helped light the fuse. The Ford Mustang turned that fuse into a national obsession. Then, Chevrolet answered with the Camaro. Dodge and Plymouth brought the noise. Buick got sneaky. Oldsmobile got serious. And suddenly, America had a new language. Cubic inches, 4 barrels, Ram Air, Hemi, big block. Stage 1. Boss, Super Sport, Roadrunner. The words sounded like weapons, and the cars looked like they had been designed by men who knew exactly what kind of trouble they were causing. But here is where the story gets messy. Because America did not just build fast cars, America built fast stories. And those stories did not always care about the truth. One guy would say his car had 450 horsepower. Another guy would say the factory lied, and it really had 500. Somebody else would say his cousin's car ran 11 seconds with nothing but headers and slicks. Then another man would swear he saw a stock one destroy everything at the track. And after a while, the actual car and the legend became two different machines. The car was made of steel. The legend was made of memory. And memory is not always honest. So today, we are putting the legend on trial. Not to disrespect the cars. The cars are legends for a reason. But the claim is the problem. The claim that one car was simply the fastest. The claim that the badge told the whole story. The claim that horsepower numbers were clean, simple, and honest. They were not. Horsepower numbers were marketing. Sometimes they were conservative. Sometimes they were confusing. Sometimes they were shaped by insurance concerns, racing rules, corporate strategy, or the simple fact that automakers knew buyers loved big numbers until those big numbers started creating big problems. And even when the numbers were real, they still did not tell you everything. Because horsepower does not launch a car by itself. A quarter-mile time depends on traction, gearing, weight, transmission, tires, weather, track condition, driver skill, and whether the car was truly stock, mostly stock, factory prepped, dealer tuned, magazine tested, or already living a second life as somebody's weekend weapon. That is why the fastest muscle car lie America still believes is so powerful. Because it lets people skip the details. It lets them say, that car was the fastest, and act like the case is closed. But the case was never closed. The suspects are still standing in the lineup. First, the 1970 Chevrolet Chevelle SS 454 LS6. This is the car that walks into the room like it already knows what people are saying. Big block, heavy attitude, factory rated at 450 horsepower and 500 pound-feet of torque. That number alone gave the LS6 a reputation that still follows it today. For many people, this is the king, the car that represents peak General Motors muscle, the one that sounds like the answer before the question is even finished. And to be clear, the LS6 Chevelle earned its fear. It had the kind of torque that made normal roads feel too short. It had the kind of presence that made people exaggerate without even meaning to. But that is also part of the problem. A car this legendary attracts stories, and over time, the stories get cleaner than reality. People talk about the LS6 like every single one left the factory ready to dominate anything on four wheels. But real life was never that simple. The right LS6 with the right gears, the right transmission, the right tire, the right driver, and the right conditions could be brutal. But a different setup could tell a different story. That is the first crack in the myth. The nameplate mattered, but the setup mattered more. Then there is the 1969 Camaro ZL1. If the Chevelle feels like the heavyweight everyone expected, the ZL1 feels like the secret weapon nobody was supposed to fully understand. Aluminum 427, factory rated at 430 horsepower, rare, expensive, built through Chevrolet's special order system. The kind of car that sounds like it came from a loophole. The ZL1 was not just a Camaro, it was a Camaro with a racing heart. And that is why it became one of the most dangerous names in muscle car mythology. But again, the myth gets slippery. Because the ZL1 was rare enough that most people did not experience one in normal life. They heard about it, they read about it, they saw what race-prepped versions could do. And then the legend filled in the blanks. A rare car is already powerful, but a rare fast car becomes almost untouchable in people's imagination. That is how a machine becomes a ghost story. Then comes the 1970 Plymouth Hemi Cuda. This car does not need to say much. The name does most of the talking. Hemi Cuda. Two words that sound like they were built to start arguments. The Hemi Cuda had the image, the engine, the noise, the collector car royalty, the kind of reputation that makes people lower their voice like they are talking about a dangerous animal. But the Hemi Cuda also proves something important about the fastest muscle car lie. A car can be legendary, valuable, beautiful, and terrifying without being the automatic winner in every real-world comparison. The Hemi name became so large that it sometimes swallowed the details. Weight mattered, traction mattered, tuning mattered, and the driver still had to drive the thing. A Hemi Cuda could be a monster, but monsters still need ground to stand on. Then we have the 1969 Dodge Charger Daytona. Now this one is different, because the Daytona did something that sounds almost fictional. With its nose cone and giant rear wing, it looked less like a street car and more like Detroit had lost patience with subtlety. The Charger Daytona was built for NASCAR domination, and in racing form, it helped push American stock car speed into a new world. Buddy Baker famously broke the 200 miles per hour barrier in a Dodge Charger Daytona. That is not garage talk, that is history. But here is where people start mixing categories. A NASCAR Aero Warrior and a stoplight street car are not the same argument. The Daytona's legend is real. Its speed story is real. But when people drag that reputation into a normal muscle car debate, the conversation gets messy fast. Was it one of the most important speed machines of the era? Absolutely. Was that the same as saying a street Daytona was automatically the quickest muscle car from a dead stop? That is where the myth starts changing shape. Speed is not one thing. Top speed is not quarter-mile speed. Track dominance is not stoplight dominance. And a legend from Talladega does not automatically settle an argument at a drag strip. Then there is the 1964 Pontiac GTO. The GTO may not be the fastest name in this courtroom, but it may be one of the most important. Because the GTO helped create the argument in the first place. It made the formula feel simple. Take a mid-size car, put a serious V8 in it, give it attitude, sell it to people who want more power than they probably need. The GTO helped make the muscle car idea feel attainable. It made speed feel like something a regular person could buy. And once regular people could buy it, regular people could argue about it. The GTO helped turn horsepower into neighborhood currency. That matters. Because the fastest muscle car lie was not born in engineering departments alone. It was born in driveways, gas stations, high school parking lots, and late-night stories where nobody had a stopwatch, but everybody had an opinion. Then comes the 1970 Buick GSX Stage 1. This is the suspect people forget until it is too late. Because when people think of Buick, they do not always think of violence. They think of comfort, respectability, maybe a doctor, maybe a successful uncle, maybe the kind of car that would never embarrass you at church. And that is what made the GSX Stage 1 so dangerous to the imagination. It did not look like it was trying as hard as some of the others, but it could move. Motor Trend's test of a 1970 Buick GS Stage 1 recorded a quarter-mile run of 13.38 seconds at 105.5 miles per hour. That is the kind of number that makes people reconsider what they thought they knew. Because sometimes the fastest-looking car was not the quickest. Sometimes the loudest reputation was not the strongest evidence. And sometimes the car people underestimated was the one that made the myth look foolish. The Buick reminds us that muscle car history is not just about badges. It is about results. And results do not care how a car is supposed to make you feel. Then there is the 1969 Ford Mustang Boss 429. This car has one of the greatest names in American performance history, Boss 429. It sounds like a final warning. It sounds like something you say before the doors close. But the Boss 429 is also one of the best examples of reputation getting tangled with reality. It was born from racing needs. It was special. It was rare. It had a massive engine stuffed into a Mustang body. It had all the ingredients of a legend. But as a street machine, it was not always the simple destroyer that the name suggests. Some cars are built with racing in mind and then softened, adjusted, or compromised for the street. Some engines are designed for high-speed breathing, but do not feel as explosive in the low-end street fight people imagine. That does not make the Boss 429 fake. It makes it interesting. The legend says, monster. The details say, slow down and look closer. And that is exactly what this channel is about. Then we have the 1967 Shelby GT 500. This car carries a different kind of power. The Shelby name is not just about speed, it is about personality. Racing heritage, style, desire. The GT 500 became the kind of car people wanted to be seen in as much as they wanted to drive. And that matters because muscle car mythology is not purely mechanical. Some cars became fast in the public mind because they looked right, because they sounded right, because the badge had magic, because the owner felt like the main character the second he touched the steering wheel. The GT 500 proves that the fastest car in the imagination is not always the fastest car on paper. Sometimes the myth is emotional, and emotion can outrun a stopwatch. Then comes the 1970 Dodge Challenger RT. The Challenger arrived with attitude. It looked aggressive. It had strong engine options. It joined the fight when the muscle car wars were already loud, crowded, and personal. The Challenger RT had the kind of presence that makes people remember it bigger than life. And that is the pattern we keep seeing. A car does not need to win every test to become part of the fastest car conversation. It just needs the right look, the right engine, the right story, and enough people willing to repeat that story. The same goes for the 1971 Plymouth Roadrunner. The Roadrunner was built around a beautiful idea. Strip away the nonsense. Give people performance. Make it fun. Make it loud. Make it affordable enough that the dream did not feel completely out of reach. That is why cars like the Roadrunner matter. Because the muscle car era was not just about the rarest machines. It was about the cars people actually saw, heard, raced, feared, and talked about. A rare ZL1 could become a legend because most people never touched one, but a Roadrunner could become a legend because people actually encountered it. One kind of myth comes from rarity, another kind comes from memory, and both can bend the truth. Now pause for a second. Look at this lineup. Chevelle SS, Camaro ZL1, Hemi Cuda, Charger Daytona, Pontiac GTO, Buick GSX Stage 1, Boss 429, Shelby GT500, Challenger RT, Roadrunner. Every single one has a case. Every single one has fans. Every single one has somebody ready to defend it like family. And that is why the LI survived. Because the argument is more fun than the answer. If there were one clean answer, the myth would have died years ago. But there is no clean answer because people are not always asking the same question. When someone says fastest, what do they mean? Fastest from 0 to 60? Fastest in the quarter mile? Fastest top speed? Fastest factory-rated horsepower? Fastest stock? Fastest after headers and slicks? Fastest with dealer tuning? Fastest in magazine testing? Fastest in the story your uncle told at Thanksgiving? Those are different questions. But car culture often treats them like one question. That is the lie. One word, fastest, hiding 10 different arguments. And once you understand that, the whole mythology changes. Because horsepower was only part of the story. Take two cars with similar power. Give one better gearing. Give one better tires. Give one a driver who knows how to launch. Give one a driver who panics when the rear end steps out. Now they are not the same anymore. Put one on a prepped drag strip. Put one on cold street pavement. Now they are really not the same. Test one in perfect magazine conditions. Race the other one on a humid Saturday night with 3 people watching and somebody yelling from the sidewalk. Now the story changes again. That is why old muscle car arguments never die. Because everybody is telling the truth from a different angle. Or at least the version of the truth they want to remember. And memory is where horsepower gets dangerous. A man may remember the sound more than the time, the feeling more than the result, the launch more than the finish line, the win more than the loss, the car more than the setup. And over time, a fast car becomes unbeatable. An unbeatable car becomes legendary. And a legendary car becomes evidence in an argument that no one can prove anymore. That is how the fastest muscle car, Lie America, still believes kept growing. It was not one lie, it was a system of lies. Factory ratings that did not always tell the full story. Marketing that sold speed as identity. Street races with no clean evidence. Magazine tests under different conditions. Owners who modified cars and still called them stock. Fans who defended their favorite brand like a religion. And decades of nostalgia polishing the rough edges off the truth. But here is the important part. The lie did not survive because people are foolish. It survived because the cars meant something. Muscle cars arrived at a time when America was loud, restless, young, and full of confidence. They gave ordinary people access to extraordinary feeling. You did not need to be rich to feel powerful. You did not need to be famous to turn heads. You did not need permission to be somebody at the stoplight. All you needed was the right key, the right engine, and enough road in front of you. That is why these cars became bigger than numbers. The Chevelle was not just a Chevelle. It was proof that Chevrolet could build a street bruiser with a serious attitude. The Camaro was not just a Camaro. It was Chevrolet answering Ford and saying, "We are not letting Mustang own this country." The Hemi Cuda was not just a Plymouth, it was a warning. The Daytona was not just a Dodge. It was Detroit bending air because brute force was no longer enough. The GTO was not just a Pontiac, it was the spark. The Buick GSX was not just a Buick. It was the quiet man at the table who knew he could fight. The Boss 429 was not just a Mustang, it was a racing secret wearing street clothes. The Shelby was not just a Ford, it was image, sound, and desire on wheels. That is what made the lie so powerful. People were not only arguing over performance, they were arguing over identity. Chevy guys, Ford guys, Mopar guys, Buick believers, Pontiac loyalists, everybody had a side, everybody had evidence, everybody had a story, and everybody had a reason to believe their car was the one. So what is the verdict? The fastest muscle car lie America still believes is not that the Chevelle was fake. It was not. It is not that the Hemi was fake. It was not. It is not that the ZL1, the GSX, the Daytona, the Boss, or the GTO were fake. They were real. The lie is the idea that speed was simple, that one badge settled it, that one horsepower rating proved it, that one story ended the debate. It never did. The fastest muscle car was never just the car with the loudest legend. It was the car with the right setup, the right conditions, the right driver, and the right measurement. And even then, somebody at the next car meet was going to argue. Because America did not fall in love with muscle cars because they gave us clean answers. America fell in love with muscle cars because they gave us better arguments. They gave fathers stories to tell their sons. They gave uncles a reason to lean back and say, "You should have seen it." They gave young men a way to feel fearless. They gave brands a war worth watching. They gave ordinary streets a soundtrack. And they gave us one of the greatest myths in American speed culture, that somewhere, somehow, somebody owned the fastest one. Maybe it was a Chevelle, maybe it was a Hemi, maybe it was a Buick nobody saw coming, maybe it was a Camaro built like a secret, or maybe the fastest car was never the point. Maybe the point was that for one night, under one streetlight, with one engine shaking the pavement, somebody felt unbeatable. And that feeling became the story. The story became the legend. And the legend became the lie. Every car has a story. Every racer has a claim. Every legend has a lie. And this is the fastest lie in America.